I will introduce our panel in a moment, but before we start, I just want to frame a little bit the discussion that we're having. So mentoring has a different meaning in the US compared to the UK and Europe. And we just want to make sure that we're all on the same page in what we're saying mentoring is. So in the US, mentoring is often going to be an experienced person in a company, an organization, a school or college who is training and counseling particularly new employees or students or trainees or something like that. In Europe, it's a lot broader category. It's more of a supportive learning relationship between one individual and another, sharing knowledge and experience and wisdom, and it's a professional journey. So it can be much less hierarchical, and I think we'll come on to some of that a bit later. But I just wanted to kind of explain to you all the parameters that we're working in terms of the definition of mentoring. So I am Louise McAward-White, as Ashley said. I will be chairing this discussion, and I love mentoring. I think that can't be understated. I was so pleased to put this panel together. I've been a mentor on 2 of the schemes that I know we're going to hear about later. And also I run the internal mentoring scheme for staff at my organisation at the British Film Institute. It's something that I really enjoy and I've really benefited from. And I will ask the rest of my panel now to introduce themselves, tell us a bit about who they are, where they are, and what their experiences of mentoring have been. And I will start with Tamzin.
Wonderful. Hi, thank you very much, Louise. So I'm Tamzin Russell. I lead on workforce at the Museums Association. And my experience with mentoring really came from when I joined there. So I currently manage our mentoring program for our professional development program, which is called Associateship of the Museums Association. But also we just launched last week something called emergency mentoring. So I manage that relationship as well. And I have been mentored myself formally, and I use that word advisedly, once, and so I can talk about that. But I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's not for everybody though, so that's another important point. It's a development intervention, and like all development interventions, individuals will have their preferences and some will work for them, some won't do. But I am a huge flag waver, and I currently look after 200 mentors and over 300 mentoring relationships as the program manager, as it were.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to touch on kind of when mentoring might be an appropriate thing for you to consider. But as I said in one of my sessions earlier this week, we are not telling any of you individually whether mentoring is or isn't for you. It's about you finding the gap in your professional development. And this is just one of the options that you might consider to fill that. Sarah, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Louise. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm an early years learning officer based in the Midlands, and I've been in the museum sector for 10 years. And this year was my first experience of mentoring. So I was matched with a mentor through the GEM scheme, which I'm sure Melissa will tell you about. But I had a really positive experience. So it really worked for me. So I feel like it was a really great thing this year, in a year that's been challenging in other ways.
Thank you so much. We're going to talk a bit more about what was particularly successful, I think, as we go through this conversation. And Melissa.
So I'm Melissa. I lead, since April, the GEM one-to-one programme, which was set up primarily because of COVID. And the fact that GEM realised that there are going to be a lot of learning specialists in our sector who are going to want and require additional support, whether they were on furlough or still working. My experience with mentoring, and it's interesting, Tamsin used the word formal and informal, because my first part of formal mentoring that I had was for my MVQ in cultural heritage, and then I did the AMA as well, and I had a fabulous mentor through that. But I was thinking when I was doing this of the more informal mentors that I've had, and it's more on the American model was my first experience was my first director in a paid education role, was very good, and she was the one who introduced me to Spectrum and the joys of modes. Even though I was an education person, she helped me get a fuller understanding of the heritage sector and all the different aspects. And she's the one who then encouraged me to get more formal mentors through programs like the AMA as well. So, like Tamsin, mentoring has worked for me in many ways. I have had mentors though, and I will say this, that personal connection hasn't been there, and we've both gone, this isn't working for us, and we've walked away. That doesn't negate any experience of mentoring. It is just something that it is about the relationship, which we'll get on to later.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on some of those things, because mentoring on both sides is a skill set. You are using skills to make it be successful, whether you're the mentor or the mentee. There are skills, and it is not something that everyone necessarily can do right now. Not saying everyone, I think, can be a mentor in theory, but it's, for some people it might be more work than others, just like any other personal relationship skill, I think, in that context. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'm going to come on to some of our sort of pre-prepared questions, but I would encourage any of you to please put any questions you have in the chat so we can have a look and think about those as we go through the session. I want to start with what is both a simple and complex question. What is mentoring? And also, I suppose, what isn't mentoring? I think I might come back to you, Melissa, first, if that's all right.
That's fine. I mean, I think it is that whether it's formal or informal, and there's a place for both, that mentoring partnerships is a partnership. It is a relationship. It's, I think someone described a mentor to me once as that trusted, critical friend that you can have an honest and open conversation with in a safe space. And it is about that. And it's mentee led. So as a mentor, I shouldn't set the agenda of our conversations. The conversations should be led by the mentee, and we ask questions to challenge thoughts and perceptions, so that you get your own idea. And I was thinking about it this morning, actually. I've got a whole load of notes, and then I was thinking, actually, it's a bit like if I'm standing in front of a painting with a family doing a learning activity, I don't tell the family what to think or feel about that painting. We go on a journey to explore it, and they are 9 times out of 10, I'll have a 6-year-old point out something in a painting that I've looked at for hours and hours and hours that I've never seen before, which changes my feelings about that painting or my knowledge about that painting. And for me, that kind of sums up mentoring. And I think there's so many different descriptions of what mentoring is in the sector that when we set up the Gen 1-to-1 programme, Tamsin did a wonderful session for us at the start, and she asked us what we all thought about mentoring was, and so we were able to bring together a shared understanding so that all Gen mentors have that it is one-to-one. It is, we're passionate about our area and learning in the heritage sector, and it is about creating that safe, confidential space for the mentee to talk about what the mentee wants to talk about professionally.
Thank you. I think there's some really interesting things for us to come back to in what you've said, especially I think we'll want to talk a bit around that kind of critical friend aspect and what that's like. Sarah, I wonder if I could come to you now, because you kind of have taken part in the GEM scheme that Melissa was talking about, and kind of what was mentoring for you?
Yeah, I think Melissa's kind of summed up my experience really well. So I think I I achieved what the scheme set out to do. So that's a good evaluation for you, Melissa. Yeah, I felt like I made a professional relationship with someone who I had actually met before, so that helped, but they might have been a complete stranger to me. We created a safe space, and that was really important to me to get the most out of the experience. So together we set our own boundaries to create this safe space. And then it was about creating a conversation that was led by me, that let me explore the things that I'd wanted to, but maybe I hadn't thought about before. So it was very structured reflection, and then breaking down those things that I took to the conversation and looking at ways to approach them. So it was a very open, safe conversation. And we did share knowledge and experience, but it was more about the guided thinking. That was more important for me. About my mentor gave me a lot of tools to approach things and a lot of ideas that I hadn't thought about before.
Mm. And I think you've touched on, for me, what some of the kind of most important things about mentoring are. It's about building a relationship with somebody it is based on a professional level, but you're in that space where you can share and not worry about the impact as much, because you've created that space and defined those boundaries, and then you have that kind of structure and some tools behind you. I think can be really helpful in kind of framing what you get from it. Tamzin, I wonder what you could reflect on what you would say mentoring is.
So I agree with everything that's been said so far. For me, the definition, I love definitions. So the fact there isn't a unified definition, I'm over it, but I would have liked there to be one. So I created one, which is an umbrella term. So in all the mentoring programs I run and all the mentoring training I deliver, I talk about it being a one-to-one development intervention. Let's keep it simple. That's what it is, because different mentors and different mentees come to that relationship with different expectations. And actually to be so prescriptive, whilst that would have been my former self, to have a nice open definition, one-to-one development intervention, I think is far more accessible. I think it is around the mentors being the custodian of the process. So what I always say is we hold that space for the person, we ring fence that space for the person, and that person then, as Melissa said, uses that space for whatever purpose they want. Which is slightly different potentially from coaching. If you're being paid to be a coach by an organisation, there is sometimes more of a an imperative. But in mentoring, there isn't as much. You are literally following their guidance. I love the reflection, Melissa, that you made around looking at the painting, and from management series, that's Socratic style. So if you look up Socratic style of leadership or Socratic style of management, it is all about taking a step back and then just asking the questions, because they will have their own solutions. They need that guided thinking, as Sarah just talked about. So it is about having those questions. And then for me, what's really really pivotal, that I think is very hard for lots of people, and I'm one of them, is that what it isn't is advice giving, because there is a real risk if that I give advice, if I tell you what to do, well, one, I can't possibly know the full situation, the full view. So I'm making advice on a tiny part of that, and that might not be appropriate. My advice might have worked for me, but would never work for you in your context. If I give you advice, you don't learn how to then self-develop, and there's a risk of creating learned helplessness and codependency. So I think the previous sort of the 1970s, 1980s models of mentorship, where we would have probably seen, I say we because I'm that old, but people would have probably seen in sort of BBC sitcoms somebody having a mentor, and that mentor giving advice and being more of the American model, really. I think that still pervades. So the biggest question I get asked is, well, why can't I give them advice? And it's like, well, because of those 5 things I've just said. So I think that's a really important point, and that's an important point for mentees going in, is that certainly sometimes mentees expect to be given the solution, and even in a mentoring relationship, that's still not the case. It is about that guided thinking, it is about that guided reflection. So yeah, those are my 2 pennies worth.
I think just reflecting from my own experience of like being a mentor, that is one of the hardest parts to learn, because my like whole personality is really like, just do this, it's very clear to me, this is the answer. And I think it's been really good personal development for me to learn to just like shut my mouth and like guide more with questioning, because actually I have found that everyone I've mentored already knows the answer inside themselves. You just have to like, sometimes you are panning for gold a bit, it's in there already, but you just have to get to it. Is what I've definitely found. I think in every relationship for mentoring I've had has been the same. They always already know somewhere, and that's really nice in a way, because you are discovering something. I wonder, Sarah, if I could just come back to you to kind of reflect a bit on whether what Tamsin said kind of represents your experience as well.
Yeah, I think just on what you just said, Louise, I was just thinking that as a mentee as well, especially if you're a bit of a people pleaser, you have to take a step back and be like, oh, I'm not trying to make my mentor proud of me. I'm not trying to do what they want to do. It took me a while to get into that mindset that this was like my journey and my goals, and that I could put what I wanted to say on the table. That took a while, and I found by the second session, I think having 2 sessions really worked in that sense, because the first session we kind of established the rapport and the boundaries, and then the second session was a lot more successful because I felt more comfortable, and like I knew that it was focused on me, and I knew more about the mentoring situation. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. You do need, for both people, you need a bit of time just to like get the lay of the land and like know each other a bit. Especially if someone is a complete stranger to you, like through a formal mentoring scheme, you do just want to, the same as with any time you meet any person in any professional context, you do just want to know a bit about them before you get going. That's definitely true. I just want to come back to a point, Tamzin, about the definition that you mentioned. So you talked about being a development intervention, which I definitely agree with. And it brings us really clearly onto our next question about what you can get from being involved in mentoring that you maybe can't get from other types of professional development. And I wonder, Sarah, if I could come back to you and sort of frame that question as, why did you want to be involved in the mentoring scheme instead of something else?
So I had a really strange motivation, first of all, to look for a mentor, which is that it just appeared in my PDR at work without any notice that I had to have a mentor. And I sort of knew who I wanted to be my mentor, and then I got too embarrassed to ask that person. So when I saw that there was a scheme that I could be matched with someone, that was just perfect for me. So I didn't go into it really knowing what mentoring was or how it would be different, but now I've been through the process, I'm so glad that I did decide to, because I found it kind of a lot more valuable than other professional development. And for me, it was because it was so personal and it was so responsive. So sometimes in other development, it's felt like we've just been getting on to what I want to do, and then it stops and moves on to the next thing, and you don't get that input to keep the conversation where you want it. Whereas with my mentoring partnership, I felt like I could really say, no, I want to work more on this, or this is what I want to get out of it. So it was it was really personal and reflective, and I don't think I've ever had any kind of development opportunity in a safe space before, and that really has kind of sold mentoring to me, so much that I want to be a mentor now, so I want to be able to create that safe space for other people. And I think with my mentor, I got she didn't give advice, but she did share knowledge, and she also asked my opinion, and then we agreed on something, and she said, oh, I'm really glad you do it that way, because I feel like I'm doing it right. And that was quite a turning point, because it's like, oh, this person who does the same thing as me but at a higher level, who I really admire her work, is saying that she's pleased that I'm doing it that way. Like she's it was like a two-way thing. So I felt really valued and I felt really seen, and I think that gave me a real confidence boost as well. So yeah, I definitely would want to be a mentee and a mentor going forward, because I feel like it's really personal, it's really reflective, and it's really valuable to have that safe space.
It's me who didn't unmute myself. I think there's some really important things to pull out from that. I think definitely around a reflective space being created. I think one of the big differences between mentoring and other professional development is that you go on a course, but then you've been on a course and that's what you've done. There's often not that time to think about what it means and what you can do with it. But mentoring is all about what things mean and what you can do with them, and finding that reflection for yourself. And I think that's definitely one of the biggest differences that you get. And I suspect that if I come to Melissa next, she may be picking up on the kind of two-way street aspect of things as well. I speculate.
You do speculate. And I just want to say, Sarah has joined us as a GEM mentor for the next 2 rounds of the mentoring program, which I think just says a lot, because we have had mentees who haven't been mentored before who are saying, I'd like to mentor now. And it is that two-way street. As a mentee, I mean, I was thinking it's very easy for us to go to a conference and hear a great case study, or read a case study in the Museum's Journal or the GEM case studies, and go, they're doing it better than me. To compare yourself, and not necessarily to compare yourself to fully funded projects where they've got extra team and so on. And this is, for me, mentoring is about, you get to make time for you to explore what you're doing, your successes, your challenges, and you carve out that time, and you've got someone who is focused on you. Who I've talked to mentees where I am in awe of how much they do in tiny museums with no budget, whether they're the only member of staff, and they do amazing things. And I learned so much from them as well. And I think also what it can do is it can change your perspectives. So you can have a conversation, and it can change the perspective that you're looking at something, either as a mentee or a mentor. And some of the feedback that we had from the one-to-one program was that it was time to reflect with someone who was focused on you. That you work with great managers, but everybody's so busy, especially at the moment, with the day-to-day operations, that you don't have that time to focus on yourself. You get to have an honest conversation. You can say, I feel frustrated about this, without anybody getting the wrong idea that you're unhappy about something or you're not happy in your work, because you are. It's just one situation, but you can be honest about that because it's unbiased, and it's someone who's not necessarily in the same organisation but sees it from the same sector ideas. It's complete confidence, and you can say out loud, you can talk through different ideas. If you've got something, and I know I've done this as a mentee, where you have to follow the company line, but you're not quite sure whether it's the right way to do it or how to do it. And having a mentor who is that safe space, I can talk about that with my mentor and see ways forward without potentially undermining the organisational line within my team that I'm leading. And it's, especially now, it keeps you connected. Isolation, working from home, being on furlough, whatever it is at the moment, it does feel very isolating, more than I remember it feeling isolated. And I think mentoring gives you that connection to the sector and to other people who are going through the same things that you're going through. So I hope that that answered the question about how it's different for you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I mean, I don't know what to even pick from what you've said. There's just all of it gold. I'm going to come on to Tamzin now for any further thoughts you can add in this kind of topic area.
Yeah, so just briefly, I think I wrote down it enables you to be vulnerable because you're not being observed by others. So it enables you to be more honest with yourself. And I wrote down, so it was interesting that Melissa sort of said similar things, and also Sarah. I just wrote down it's really nice to have and be listened to in a time where everyone's busy, or in a time where you may not have a support around you, where there is anyone that is absolutely listening to you and dedicated to you. So I think that's great. I think the other thing that I would say, just because it sort of relates to other professional development interventions, is unlike a course, in a way, it's the perfect marrying up. So what should happen is every time you go on a course, your line manager should book a 40-minute conversation with you to say, what did you learn? How are you going to apply it? What does this look like? Very rarely happens, apart from that I was your line manager. But this enables, you can use mentoring to enable you to take all of that information and knowledge that you might get in a different space, like going on a training course, and then you're able to workshop it with them, as it were, about what would work in your culture and your context, how you might think about introducing it. So I think they're a perfect partnership. So using the content that you might get from anything else, I mean, future learning, it could be reading anything, but then having that space to talk, it helps you assimilate that and consolidate it and begin to, in technical terms, do workplace transfer.
Thank you. That sort of answer is sort of part of the answer to one of the questions that's just been raised in the chat about do the panel have any tips about reflecting? Some of the things Tamsin said just there are what you would do to reflect. So you've been on a course, for example, think about it afterwards. What did you do? What does it mean? What can you take forward? And what are your kind of thoughts on what you experienced? And that doesn't mean that you are saying I'm going to do 100 things. Picking one thing can be a more effective reflection than trying to do everything at once, because only you know your organization and the kind of parameters that you're working in, really. I think we'll be picking on reflection a little bit through some of our other questions as well, but I am going to come to another question in the chat. And I wonder, Sarah, if I could come to you on this first. I've not quite had the confidence to approach a mentoring scheme, partly because I'm not sure what I would want to achieve from it. Does the panel advise that you have specific goals or issues you want to resolve, or can you enter it as an interested individual looking to see what comes out of the experience?
Yeah, I think that probably reflects my situation quite well, because I went into it without any goals, and the thing that threw up some goals ended up being how long I was furloughed for, because I ended up being furloughed for 7 months and then going through a restructure. So that sort of threw up some goals towards the end of the mentoring process. But I didn't go in with any set goals, but what I did do was I really committed to the process. So I realized that this had been oversubscribed, so I was lucky enough to get a mentor, so I didn't want to waste that opportunity that someone else could have had. So even though I didn't have goals and I wasn't sure, I made sure that I kind of took every opportunity, and I had time because I was furloughed. So the one thing I could give it was time. So when my mentor sent me anything in preparation, even though I found it quite challenging, and I did keep putting it off till the last minute, I will be honest, because I was a bit worried about what it might uncover as well, because it was such a difficult time. But yeah, I did put a lot of preparation time into it. I did do a lot of thinking, and kind of with the tools my mentor gave me, I actually found those goals and those questions quite easily in the end. But it was part of the process. It wasn't there at the start. So I wouldn't let that put you off. I think as long as you're committed to the process and doing what you can and working with your mentor, and yeah, kind of showing them respect through putting in the time, then I think that would be fine. I wouldn't let that put you off.
Mm. I think as well, it's just worth reflecting that it might depend on the scheme itself to what is an appropriate kind of approach. Because if you're going for a scheme that lasts a bit longer, where you have more sessions, you have longer to uncover what might be hidden to you at the moment. Whereas perhaps Tamzin, you might reflect on this, if you could, about when you're doing a one-off session, that might be more challenging.
It might be, but the first thing I want to say, I suppose, is you're never wasting the mentor's time. The really important thing is it's your time, and if you choose to waste it, not that it ever would be a waste, that is absolutely your choice anyway. So I do think there is a difference, but equally, what I wouldn't want is that concern around, oh my gosh, I've got to have a goal, almost stops people participating and sort of paralyzes their decision making. So it could well be your goal of the mentoring session, if there's just one, is to experience mentoring. That is a goal in its own right. It could be that your goal of experience, even a one-off, is that you want to talk with somebody to identify what your goals are. So it is absolutely fine, even if it's just a one-er, an hour or an hour and a half. Don't feel concerned that you don't know exactly what you want to talk through. Just start talking. If you've got a good mentor, they will highlight what the space is for, and over to you, and what would be helpful. And you know what, if there's silence and I can drink my coffee while you do your thinking in that ring-fence space, that is also good. And I think that's a really important part, is we can all do, and I see Stephanie's got that question about reflection, but we can all do this. As Louise said, we have got the answers within us, but we might need somebody to help us. But I think the majority of people, often it's not about having somebody there, it's about, because I know personally, it's about ring fencing that time. I could ring fence that time just for me to have a cup of coffee and reflect. Yeah, I think so. You're not wasting anyone's time. The goal is experiencing mentoring or working out what your goal is anyway. And yeah, just do it.
And Melissa, you're nodding as well.
I think Tamsin's just said it all. You're never wasting a mentor's time. Apply. I mean, this is at the moment we are doing, the one-to-one is just 2 or 3 sessions. It is a very short period of time. I work with others over much longer periods of time as well. I think it is about, if you're thinking about mentoring, you already have a conversation in mind, and that's not necessarily with a specific goal, but you've already got a conversation in mind. Have that conversation, and if it works for you, great. It's your time, you've ring-fenced it for that conversation.
Definitely, I would definitely echo everything everyone said. The worst thing that can happen is nothing terrible. So what's to lose, I think, on all sides, really. I am going to ask one of the questions that was submitted in advance. And it's about, if you're thinking of you want to be mentored maybe, or you want to have mentor somebody, but you don't want to or can't go through one of the formal schemes for whatever reason, what are your options in terms of finding yourself a mentor? What can you do to do that? Tamzin, I'm going to come to you because you were nodding.
I think it's just ask. So we're an extremely generous sector. Mentoring has been part and parcel of the development framework for the sector for a long old time. Just ask, just say, I am at a point in my career or I'm looking to join the sector, and I would really value an opportunity to have some time with you. What I often say to people though is, don't necessarily say I'd like you to be my mentor. And I know that sounds it's like you're not being honest, but I think there are lots of connotations of that. So people hear mentor and they hear responsibility, they hear a long relationship, And if we're talking about people's capacity, that might automatically they say no. So I always recommend, if you've got something that you want to explore, or you see somebody that you've got a good relationship with, or you think there'd be a good relation, there's nothing wrong with approaching them and saying, I'd really like to have some time with you. Could we meet for a coffee? And then I think the important thing is, I think Melissa talked about people that she's been mentored by that she didn't necessarily have that connection with. Until you have that coffee with that person, you don't know whether this is going to be a live or productive mentoring relationship anyway. So I think always go in with very clear, managed expectations. It's really easy for me, please don't all inundate me, easy for me to book out an hour's coffee session with you, and then let's see where that goes, as opposed to if you said, oh, could you be my mentor for the next 12 months? I'll be like, oh, I don't think I can't, I'm just too busy. So I think there is something just about being far more open, but direct, but manage their expectations as well as yours. So you're making it easy for them to say yes.
Definitely. And I think someone has done exactly that to me. They found me on Twitter and then added me on LinkedIn and said, I've seen you on Twitter and you're super interesting and you're so nice. Oh yeah, you're so great. And I'm always like, yeah, I am nice and I am great. Oh, thank you so much. So I'm already flattered and like really pleased that someone wants to talk to me. And then when they ask for an hour of my time, I'm like, of course I will give you an hour of my time. Why would I not want to give you an hour of my time? And I'm not saying you have to lay it on thick, but telling someone why you've approached them, I think is incredibly important, because you could have chosen from any of the hundreds, thousands of museum professionals that exist. But if you're making that approach because you want to talk to them, you need to at least say why you think they can have something to share with you in that hour-long conversation that you're asking for. I think it is really important to give something to start that connection as well. That's kind of what that helps to do. I think it's really important. I'm going to come to, who am I going to come to? What am I going to do? Tamzin touched on this slightly as well about the question in the chat, which is, I'm currently a volunteer but working towards entering the sector in a paid capacity. Would mentoring be useful or helpful in this situation? Now, I will start by saying I'm not expecting a yes/no answer to this question, but I'm going to come to Melissa, maybe just to reflect a bit on when mentoring can be useful.
I think it's if you've got a route, and it's very difficult when you're volunteering and starting off in the sector to know exactly where you want to be. I think I did, because I always wanted to be in education outside of the classroom. That's my passion. But not everybody has that. And I think sometimes it is about exploring your options and exploring what opportunities are out there, how you might get more opportunities. We've had a lot of the mentees applying for one-to-one are just starting out or wanting to get into the sector, or within the first 5 years of working in the sector, and it has great value for someone. And I think it is that point of, don't let it put you off. If you're a volunteer, or if you're just starting off in the sector or a student, don't be put off by applying to be a mentee, because it might actually highlight some of the things that you can, those transferable skills that you have if you want to explore how to get a job and look at your skills. It could go, actually, the thing that gets me up in the morning is the collections. It's looking after the collections, and it can give you clarity of where you want to be. So apply. If there is a scheme, do apply. And Tamsin's nodding along.
Thank you. I will confess my computer froze up, so I missed your last sentence. I'm certain it was fabulous though, but I have no idea what you said. I'm so sorry. My computer everyone was static. I would like to come back to Sarah to think a little bit more around the kind of reflecting aspect, if that's all right. So you said that you found some of it a bit difficult, and I wonder if you could kind of tell us a bit about what that was like for you.
Yeah, I think I just found it a little bit awkward at first to almost to like dedicate that time to myself. I think we're so used to being constantly busy in this sector that it's very unnatural to put time aside for ourselves. So I suppose in a way, being on furlough actually probably helped to make my mentoring experience so positive, really, because I was very isolated. So I really valued that connection within the sector because I had that time to put aside. But now that I've done it, I would always prioritise that time, and I want to prioritise mentoring as well. And I've had a really great response from my line manager, which I think I didn't expect. So that was really positive. But yeah, the value of it's been seen. But yeah, I think I found self-reflection a little bit awkward in giving myself permission to take the time. And I think a bit like the question in the chat, I was a bit like worried that I wouldn't find anything to talk about, anything to work on. In the end, we had lots to talk about, and quite a lot of interesting things came out of it that I didn't expect as well. So using some of the tools that my mentor gave me, we actually ended up looking at how my skills are transferable outside of the sector. Now, I never expected that to come out of a scheme that was quite a specific scheme for a particular part of one sector, that we ended up looking at transferable skills. So I think once you're able to do the reflection and you're able to use the tools, you can be quite surprised at how broad the outcomes can be.
Definitely. And I think having some, like most mentors in most schemes especially will have gone through some training and will have an idea of some tools to use, but you can find those as well for yourself. But the tools kind of help shape the reflection a little bit as well, so it doesn't feel so meandering. I think sometimes it can be. Tamsin, I know you want to reflect on reflecting.
So I think it's a really common question. I don't think it comes naturally to everybody to reflect, and it is a skill set in its own right. So for the AMA, we've got a 2-pager or 1-pager, 2-pager about how to develop those skills just in general. And I think sometimes it's about reframing it. So I always used to be, by a very close friend, to be told that I was an overthinker, an overanalyzer. And so I just decided, you know what, she's not wrong, but I'm going to call it reflection from now onwards. Because me thinking about what I've done is reflection, but I just had the wrong description. So I think about whether you do those things but have called it a different name, because that is all reflection. And I think also, you know, if you're in a mentoring relationship, and I didn't do this because I was always running, being a mentee, this is now, is see whether you can, even if it is just 15 minutes before, just in time reflection before you get in, can help. But equally in session, talking it through is also reflection. So it's just you're verbalizing that reflection rather than thinking about it and then writing it down and then bringing it to the mentoring session. So, but it is a skill set in its own right. So for one of the programs I managed, the Museums Gallery Scotland one, in the end, we did a session on reflection, a whole hour and a half about how to reflect, because it is a skill set in its own right. But there are lots of materials out there. Just Google how to effectively reflect and you'll get loads of stuff.
I will just take this opportunity also to mention our session tomorrow, breakfast, where I think we will talk a bit more about reflection in terms of keeping track of your career with Melissa again. And I hope that my Fair Museum Jobs colleague will be able to put that in the chat momentarily, just to get you on board there too. I will come on to another question, and it's, what do you think is the most important piece of advice for people who are considering getting involved in mentoring? So either as a mentor or a mentee, what piece of advice do you think you would want to pass on to them? I'm going to come to Sarah first.
I think I would say go into it with a really open mind, and be willing to set aside some time for it, and be willing to put in as much as you can, and then I think that'll help you to get the most out of it. And don't be nervous about it. I think I was too nervous about it and too unsure, and it seemed like this quite mystical thing that I'd never been part of, and it seemed a bit daunting, but it wasn't anything like that at all. So I hope some of this session has helped for anyone that wants to be mentored, has helped them to kind of understand the process a little bit and not feel nervous about it.
I think there definitely is an aspect of mystery, I think, when you've not done it, because you just don't really know what to expect. But really, at its core, it is a professional conversation. And we all have professional conversations every day with people in our circle, either at work or outside. So that is really at its core what it is to me, I think. So yeah, it's definitely right that there is a lot of uncertainty. Tamzin, I'm going to come to you next. What advice would you give somebody who's thinking about getting involved in mentoring?
Just do it. And if it doesn't work out for you, if you're not that person, or it's not the right time for you, either as a mentor or as a mentee, come back to it when it is. I just think you just don't know until you try. And I mean, other than attending things like this and looking at, there's hashtags around mentoring, so you can be beginning to develop your mentoring practice without even signing up to be a mentor or mentee, just in advance, in preparation, if it's something that you think it's something you might want to get into. But I just say, just go for it. You've got nothing to lose.
Exactly. Just go for it, because if it goes wrong, you've still learned something about yourself. That's the thing as well. Like, it's all going to be a valid experience. Melissa, what would you want to tell people if they're thinking about getting involved in mentoring?
I think, as Tamsin and Sarah said, do it. If you're interested, look at it. I mean, there's so much out there about mentoring. There's about the different tools that you can use as well, that even if you go on Pinterest and you search mentoring, it comes up with the Grow model, all these different things. It can be a little bit overwhelming. I think if you're interested in being a mentor, I'm happy to have a chat with people, book out a coffee time with me, and I'll talk through what we do with GEM. From the GEM point of view, I hope it works, and Louise and now Sarah can say with honesty if it does. We set up a mentoring network, a mentors network. So we have the ability we've got a WhatsApp group, we've got at the moment monthly Zoom chats, which are very informal, and it's about making a community of the mentors, so you're not alone. And my role as the mentoring champion, as well as being a mentor, is to support the mentors and to be there for the mentors, so anybody can come and talk to us. But yes, if you're interested in becoming a mentor, you're not alone. You will get support however you go into mentoring. And do give me a call or drop me an email. I'll put my email address in here. So if you are interested, let me know.
Thank you, Melissa. I will let you type your email address in the chat and come through to one of our other questions, I think. And I'll come to Sarah again. When we were thinking in advance about this session, we were thinking about what can mentors and mentees get from mentoring? What did you get from it that you haven't already said, because you've said so many things?
So one thing that I realised I got out of it, this is quite personal, and I was really lucky because me and my mentor have stayed in touch, like, quite informally, but we've got, I wouldn't call it a mentoring partnership now, but we've kind of like got a little network, and we do contact each other about things. I really value her opinion. And it came out of one of the other sessions where someone said, if things are going wrong, make a team me and surround yourself with people that you're on your team. And I feel like my mentor is now like a great addition to my team. So I've got this like extra person who's got all this experience and all these skills, and she's rooting for me. So that is like a really great thing to think about. And like one part of mentoring is being a sounding board, but that's just like quite a small part of mentoring. But now outside of mentoring, I know that I've got that sounding board for my ideas as well. And yeah, definitely I feel more confident, definitely feel more confident at a time when there was lots of external factors that were knocking my confidence in the sector. Like even after 10 years, this year has really thrown everything at me. So yeah, got a lot of confidence out of mentoring.
Definitely. I think confidence comes on both sides as well. As a mentor, I know I've experienced having my confidence boosted by being able to share within that mentoring relationship. And it makes you sometimes realize all the things you've done that you can share, and those experiences you've had, I think is really useful on both sides, definitely. Tamzin, I'm going to come to you on what mentors and mentees can get out of mentoring.
I mean, the world's the oyster, isn't it? So it could be to do with your goals. It could be. So I was mentored once formally about a year and a half ago, and she informed my mentoring practice. So she was just phenomenal as a mentor. So I learned about mentoring, even though that wasn't the subject that I was exploring with her. Well, it was probably one of my goals. And yes, you just learn new things. So my particular one is that she taught me a particular skill set. I was complaining about a relationship that wasn't working and how much I couldn't abide this person, and she just made me write down anything I respected about them. And I was like, oh my god, that's so obvious, isn't it? And I was like, do you know what, as much as I still don't like them and I don't trust them, there are elements of their professional expertise that I do trust, so I have to cling on to that, and that's what I do. So I think you just learn new tools and techniques that you can apply to your own practice, but also as a mentor, I can now apply to others. So I've asked people to do that as well. So yeah, just loads of stuff.
Someone in the chat has also mentioned about how, as a line manager, like some of the, I mean, it is absolutely the skills of mentoring should be involved in your practice as a line manager, and that's an area that can definitely help you reflect on. Melissa, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, it's following on from that comment. I mean, I've learned so much from my mentors that I've then taken into my own team, and it's something that's come through from other mentors on the GEM program, is the active listening that we do, the asking the questions, and the questions we choose to ask in conversations to explore topics. So all things that can be taken back into your line management skills. And I've done that, or I hope I've done that personally. I think one of the other things is that as a mentor, you get to see outside of your own organisation as well. So you get to see what's going on across the sector. And it increases your empathy for what other people are going through as well. I think it's one of those things that, both as a mentee and a mentor, I've had conversations about things that are my priority, and it's been turned around, and it's that reframing of is it their priority as well? So if I go into a conversation with a curator, for example, for a learning program, I will have thought beforehand about from their perspective. So I'll go in and go, I want to work with this object, and I know that you'll have some conservation concerns around me having 30 children touching this sculpture or whatever. How can we work together? So it's more of an exploration. So I think that there's a lot there. I mean, one of the things, and this is from the evaluation that we've done as well, is one of the mentors said in their evaluation that they don't think they would have been as concerned for colleagues on furlough if they hadn't mentored people on furlough and seen their perspective as well. So it does have that wider learning on both sides.
There's definitely a lot around empathy that and empathy on its own is a skill, but definitely something that comes up in mentoring a lot. And I can definitely see how that would help you understand sort of better people in a different situation to you, especially thinking about furlough this year, it has been really difficult. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to pass to Tamzin just to let you give us a quick rundown of your current mentoring things people can get involved in.
So we've got 2 programs at the moment. So we have just launched emergency mentoring, which is a 1.5 hour slot with individuals within the sector. All of this mentoring, I do have to say now, is MA members only, whereas our first tranche at the beginning, it was open more broadly, but we've just had to think about how we survive in terms of our revenue streams, as you can imagine, as all museums and organisations are doing. So we've got emergency mentoring. In January, I kick off again a series of career conversations. So that's sort of very, very focused career mentoring, 1 hour slots with me. And then we have our overarching AMA programme, which is a professional development programme of which mentoring is part of it. So you get 10 hours worth of mentoring per year with a mentor within the sector. And for those of you that are interested in mentoring, we will be advertising for new mentors for that last programme in January, where you then get training to become a mentor, etc. So yeah, really looking forward to taking some more AMA mentors on from January.
Thanks a lot, Tamzin. And Melissa, this is your time to plug too.
Yeah, so thank you to Culture Recovery Fund. GEM has funding now for 2 more rounds of the one-to-one programme. So it is for learning and engagement people, and that's within museums, heritage sites, libraries, places of worship, as long as it is learning based. As Tamsin said, originally when we started it was open to everybody, but for the same reasons as the MA is having to do it, it is for GEM members only. What I will say is we do have student membership and unwaged membership as well, as the MA has as well. So I've put a link in the chat for everybody. The official end date is today for this round of applications. However, I won't close the chat. I won't close the applications until Sunday. So if anybody on this wants to apply, please do. We are still taking mentors as well. So if you're interested in mentoring, do email me, and that's melissa@gem.org.uk. And then the next round will open on the 16th of February as well.
Thank you both. Tamzin and Melissa have both put links in the chat to those schemes and ways to contact them. If you would like to talk about mentoring, you can contact, I suspect any of us would be happy to talk about our experiences. I've put my Twitter handle in the chat, my non-Fair Museum Jobs one as well. So please feel free to get in touch with me if you would like to. And do save the chat now if you are here and want to keep an eye on those resources. We will be saving it on the Fair Museum Jobs end and sharing all of that when we share the recording of this session as well. And I suppose we're now slightly over time, so it falls to me to thank our panelists so much for sharing their experiences, resources, information with us. And thank you all for coming along to this development breakfast. Thank you all so much.